The following 3 participants are in the conference.
AV room.
Hildy Angius.
Steve Moss.
The following 3 participants are in the conference.
And to the republic for which it stands,
Hildy Angius.
Steve Moss.
with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. Oh God, we pray for our board of county supervisors who have been entrusted to lead Mohave County and to improve the lives of our fellow citizens. Grant them wisdom, understanding, counsel, and strength, that they may uphold what is right and follow that which is true. May your divine grace be upon them now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, this morning we have Supervisor Hildy Angius and Supervisor Steve Moss attending by telephone. Do we have them on the line?
Supervisor Moss?
I'm here.
Supervisor Angius?
Here.
Supervisor Moss?
Here.
Okay, thank you. The Board of Supervisors may, by motion, recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorneys on any item contained in the agenda pursuant to ARS 38-43103, A3 and 4. This morning, I'll entertain a motion and action to call for an executive session to be held July the 18th, 2016 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-43103, A3 and 4 to discuss items noticed on the agenda with an asterisk.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Going on to the official business to come before the board this morning. We'll begin with the discussion on pending or contemplated litigation claims and demands. Do we have anything, Attorney Taylor?
Chairman Bishop, we have nothing from the county attorney's office.
Okay, thank you. Committee and legislative reports. Do we have anything, starting with you, Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Lower Colorado River Multi-Species Conservation Program Steering Committee had their meeting, and just to go over, just for maybe our edification for the board about the money that's been spent, the budget this year is going to be $30,940,902. The program administrator is getting $1.4 million, fish augmentation $1.9 million, species research 3.3, system monitoring 3.3, conservation area development and management 13.9, post-development monitoring 1.8 million, adaptive management 1.7, funding account remedial measures 1.1, and to outreach to the public we're spending $125,000. The land and water fund is going for $2.1 million. The estimated cost of this program since we've started in 2003 dollars is $626 million. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Wow, thank you. Supervisor Watson, do you have a report?
Not this morning, thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Angius, do you have anything?
Nothing this morning, Madam Chair.
And Supervisor Moss?
No, nothing this morning.
Okay, I'd like to report that June 16th and 17th, I did attend the ACO Leadership Summit in Phoenix, and the event brought together more than 100 county officials and leaders who heard from speakers on media strategies, elections, cybersecurity, national service, and more. In addition, I had a chance to meet with sponsors, vendors, and exhibitors who provided valuable products and services to our counties. So that is my report on the ACO conference. Do we have a county administrator's report?
No report today, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And there are no Board of Supervisors meetings to approve, so we'll go on to the call to the public. Those wishing to address the call to the public regarding matters not on the board agenda must fill out and submit to the clerk a call to the public form. Action taken as a result of public comments will be limited to responding to criticism, referral to staff, or placing a matter on a future agenda. Comments are restricted to items not on the regular agenda with the exception of the consent agenda and must relate to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. We have one speaker at the call of the public, and that's on item number 10. If any of the supervisors plan on pulling that item, I'll wait and let him speak there. Otherwise, I don't believe he wants to speak. Okay, so there's no reason to have a call to the public then. I will close. Oh, I'm sorry. We have one additional call to the public, Mr. Tommy Fenton. Thank you, Jenny. Good morning,
Madam
Mr. Fenton.
Chairman.
If you'd give us your name and address for the record, and you've got 3 minutes.
My name is Tommy Fenton. My address is 4475 North Lomita Street in Kingman, Arizona. I've emailed all of you, the board, on the issue with a property that is next door to me, which I'm actually in back of the commercial property. There are a number of structures on this property that do not have building permits. They've been there for years. And I just can't seem to get anywhere with development services with it. I understand the property owner has applied for building permits, and as you can see in some of the photos that I sent, these buildings are actually falling down. There's also a large awning. It's approximately 750 square feet. The structure has actually been erected on the 15-foot setback at the rear of their property. They applied for at one point, a address for this building. It has a 911 only address. However, it does have a mailbox, and they're claiming that that building alone is turned sideways facing northern, yet the front door or sideways facing Lomita, yet the front door faces northern. It has a Lomita address, so claiming that that rear property line is the side property line. And the part I can't understand, they keep telling me the permit, it does have a permit, but the permit is valid, but it's C2 property, and you've got a 750 square foot outside storage awning on C2 property. C2 does not allow open lot storage. And as you've seen in a lot of the pictures, there's a lot of stuff scattered out all over that property. There's also a retaining wall at the opposite end of the property. I talked to the folks at Development Services about that retaining wall. They suggested I talk to flood control. It doesn't have a permit, and the entirety of this wall is built on setback. It's 2 feet from the property line all the way, its entire course. It's a runaround constantly, and I'm just trying to live in peace. There are people out there working almost 24 hours a day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And during the call to the public, we cannot answer your questions, but I can ask staff to do some research and get back to you in writing as far as the complaints that we have completed that are on file and complaints that are still active. So if we could have Planning and Zoning Director.
Madam Chairman, I sent you a complete review from the Planning and Zoning Department this morning. I sent one to each of the supervisors. So if you, I would ask that you review that letter, and if you have any further questions, contact me and we'll work through the issue. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fenton. Okay. I see no other letters to speak during the call of the public, so I'll now close the call of the public, and we'll go on to the presentation of the Muni Code. Good morning, Nathan. Looking forward to your presentation.
Morning, Chairman, Supervisors. Well, this has been a long time coming, and for those of you that don't know what Muni Code is, it is an online representation of the ordinances of Mohave County. This project began, I believe, 2+ years ago, and essentially the project is codification of the county ordinances. And prior to this project, the ordinances existed in a form that was not very user-friendly. Each ordinance was named and titled based on the year and the number of the ordinance. So instead of being able to look at human being descriptions of titles and chapters, you looked at numbers, purely numbers. So it was almost impossible to track down the information you were looking for without viewing an index of the ordinances. So we finally got to a point where the vendor has finished working with county staff to codify and title all of the county ordinances. Those ordinances are now available online via the county website, and I'm going to show you what that interface looks like today. So for the viewing public, if you visit the Mohave County website, in our popular services section right here on the right, there is a link that says County Ordinances. When you click this link, it takes you to Muni Code's website where you will be able to browse the Mohave County Code of Ordinances. So essentially, this interface is designed to efficiently and effectively facilitate searching the ordinances. When you're a new user and you first get to this website, there is some walkthroughs that are visible. So I just turned them back on because I've already been to this site. But here it shows you this is where you search. So in the search bar, you can put in terms like noise, dog, and we can do that real quick. Show you how fast this interface actually is. So very quickly, it looked through all of the county's ordinances, and we have a listing of every time dog was found. We could also search for other things such as noise, and there we have the results for noise. So this interface really opens up our ordinances for view to the general public. It gives them an interface to where they can search the county laws essentially. So the other options other than search is over here on the left-hand side is basically our list of codes. And you'll notice that they're titled Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and then there's comparative code tables that compare county ordinances, state law, and some existing resolutions. If you take a look at our code of ordinances, you'll see the titles, which are a lot more easy to navigate than previously. And in a nutshell, that is our online code of ordinances. Is there any questions?
Supervisor Johnson, do you have any questions?
No, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Watson?
Just like to tell Nathan and the whole department, thank you very much. Job excellent. Thank you. Job well done.
You're welcome. And I can't take all the credit for this. This was something that I led the charge on, but fundamentally this project was done almost completely by the vendor. The part I facilitated was transferring them the data so that they could read through the data and work with their employees that do the codification. A big part of this process was legal review, and I believe the county attorney's office was highly involved in reviewing the codification of these ordinances in order to make sure that the law and intent of the law was not being changed through this codification process. So thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Moss, do you have any comments or questions?
None. Thank you, but I would like to say thank you to Nathan and all the staff that made this possible. I think it'll be a great benefit to the viewing public.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Angius, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I do. I can't believe I waited over 2 years and I'm not there to see the demonstration. I want to thank Jimmy Anderson, who originally took the charge along with Nathan and the Municode people. I think when we started, we did not know how long it was going to take. And then Bill Ekstrom for doing such a fine job, and at times it looked like just such an overwhelming task to go through all these things, and having never done it, sort of kind of going by the seat of our pants. But I'm so glad we have it, and I've been talking about it for several years now and telling the public that now that we have a searchable database online of our codes and ordinances, to go through them for those who have time to do so. And if you see anything that you think is not relevant, or just plain stupid, come to me or your supervisor and let them know. And if we agree with it, maybe we can do something about it. But this will just make things a lot easier for the public. And again, I wish people could understand how much work went into this, and I can't wait to see it. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to thank Supervisor Angius. I believe you're the one that made the motion to begin this process back in 2013, and Supervisor Watson for making the second. But one of my wishes was to fulfill all of Joy Brotherton's projects, and this was the last project that I feel like I'm able to fulfill her wishes. And so my promise to do that is now complete with this codification. So thank you, Nathan, and thank you, Jenny. I know you did a lot of work, and the county attorney's office and all of the supervisors. And I think this is really a big deal. It shows Mohave County is open for business, and we're transparent, and we want information easily searched for the general public so they know more about what our rules and regulations are, and maybe we can reduce some of those regulations now that we can see them at a glance, and get rid of anything that might be repetitive or duplications. Thank you very much, Nathan, for all you've done and bringing this forward.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on now to the consent agenda. The following items listed on the consent agenda would be considered as a group and acted upon with one motion with no separate discussion of said items unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. So beginning with Supervisor Johnson, do you want any items pulled from this agenda?
21, 24, 27, 30, 32.
Okay, that's 21, 24, 27, 30, and 32. Supervisor Watson, do you have any items you'd like pulled?
I have no additional items other than the ones already marked.
Okay, Supervisor Angius, do you have any items?
None this morning.
And Supervisor Moss?
None this morning, thank you.
Okay, and I have none to pull other than what's already been pulled. So I'll entertain a motion to approve items 5 through 36 minus items 21, 24, 27, 30, and 32.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 21, this is pulled by Supervisor Johnson. Establish a value for a 42-foot by 330-foot right-of-way dedication per Book 3, page 541, which the Board of Supervisors abandoned in accordance with Resolution 2016-065, set at $10 due to the dedication being an inverted conveyance at no cost to the county, which was wholly contained within the parcel by the current owner, and authorize the chairman of the Board of Supervisors to sign the attached quitclaim deed disposing of the inverted dedication abandonment of a section of Hewlett Avenue between State Route 95 and Mountain View Road to the abutting owner in the Mohave Valley area of Mohave County. Supervisor Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder if Mr. Letowski could give us a map of this. I didn't seem to see one, and that's why I'm pulling these off on from the consent. I don't see maps on these.
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, members of the board, do apologize that the backup did not include a map, and I do have a some information as it relates to the location of this property. It is situated abutting the section line on the south side of the section of Hewlett Avenue between State Route 95 and Mountain View Road. This is a section of Hewlett Avenue that is not maintained by the county, but it was improved by the Mohave Indian Tribe, Fort Mohave Indian Tribe, to a paved condition on the north side of the section line because, as you probably are aware, tribal lands do exist north of Hewlett Avenue. This particular parcel previous property owner did dedicate to the county at no cost to the county a 330-foot section of right-of-way, to which now the property owner requested abandonment. The board at their previous meeting approved such abandonment, and this is to facilitate the action of the compensation, which is being recommended at 0, given that the county acquired this right-of-way previously at no cost to the county.
And this isn't going to interfere with whatever the Indians have done?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, correct. The Fort Mohave Indian Tribe has already improved Hewlett Avenue, and this right-of-way is not required for that roadway operation, especially given that there is no other rights-of-ways dedicated or available for public ingress and egress on the south side of the section line to which this property exists.
I have no other further questions, Madam Chair, on that one.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions of Director Lukowski?
Would make a motion to approve?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Going on to item number 24. Adoption, Board of Supervisors Resolution Number 2016-079, abandoning that portion of the service alley that adjoins Parcel 4-3 and Parcel 4-5 to the west and Lynn Drive to the east, each measuring 25 feet wide by 95 foot long, by a dedication of a 1988 amended map of the subdivision tract 4009-A Terra Plaza revised, which containing 2,375 square feet more or less, and further approve the abandonment to be processed and the right-of-ways to be purchased per ARS Title 38, Chapter 20, Article 8, at no cost to Mohave County. This is located in Fort Mohave, District 5, Mohave County.
Madam Chair, I guess Mr. Lutowski again, please. It appears this was a frontage road. Are other parts of this frontage road still going to be in the county's possession?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, yes, this is a overall piecemeal abandonment, if you will, of the frontage road adjacent Lynn Drive. The county has previously granted abandonments on 2 other portions of this service drive, and this particular action contemplates 2 additional portions. So it is going to leave some portions of the service drive still in the county's possession, as these petitioners for the abandonment did not obtain any other property owner concurrence, if you will, or toward abandoning a broader portion of this service alley.
I guess my question would be then, it seems to me if we're going to abandon it and we have quite a bit of land there, we either abandon it all or we don't do pieces, because now how are we going to, if for some reason we need to get to the one piece that we own, we have no right of way to get to it, correct?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, actually the service drive abuts Lynn Drive, which is held by Mohave County, maintained by Mohave County and held in fee title. So we have direct access from the adjacent Lynn Drive to any of those other portions.
I believe Administrator Hendricks wants to speak. Go ahead.
Is the Director Lutowski, is the piecemeal abandonment due to the abandonment being to the adjacent property owners, and those adjacent property owners are willing to actually purchase that property, and the other adjacent property owners haven't, that were not abandoning the road next to, haven't come forward and expressed their desire to purchase that property. And the county is reserving the abandonment until we get a commitment to be fully compensated for that land, and it go back on the tax rolls. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Administrator Hendricks said is exactly correct, that these abandonment petitions are pertaining to those property owners abutting the parcels to be considered for abandonment only. And yes, the property owners will be, through an appraisal presented to the county by a licensed appraiser, be compensating the county for the value of that portion of the abandonment parcel. So future property owners along that Lynn Drive corridor will have to make separate petition to the county if they desire to obtain the service alley as well.
That's all the questions I had, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second the motion.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Item number 27, acknowledge abandonment application proposal from Corrigan Navigational Strategies and Bullhead 1 to abandon that portion of Bison Avenue as dedicated in Book 1488, page 874, Book 1493, page 963, located in the Fort Mohave area, and approve processing said abandonment in the same manner and under the same procedure for abandoning county highways per ARS 286709, and authorize Public Works to serve notice and solicit public comment for the purpose of further consideration said abandonment as provided in ARS Title 28, Chapter 20, Article 8, upon satisfactory completion of requirements defined under ARS 286701. Okay, Director Lukowski, I believe we're going to want you again, if you could come up. Supervisor Johnson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And exactly how do we go about announcing this for the public so they understand what's going on? Because you're giving, this is quite a bit of right-of-way that we're abandoning now. It abuts Bison.
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, this actually concerns the right-of-way comprising the existing Bison Avenue between Joy Lane and just south of El Rodeo Road. Staff is presenting this abandonment petition for the first time to the board for direction in the context of processing said abandonment by providing public notice as well as notice to the adjacent property owners of the abandonment petition. Staff will then return to the board with the findings from both our public notice as well as our notification of affected stakeholders, utilities, etc., for the board to consider formally abandoning the Bison Avenue. This is adjacent to and immediately west of Sun Valley subdivision. And then the final step in the process would be for the board to consider a compensation for said abandonment.
This right-of-way was acquired because we needed the right-of-way to build the road?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, this right-of-way, staff will certainly be providing that information when we present the right-of-way abandonment in terms of the origin of the right-of-way establishment. It may have been established piecemeal. I cannot comment at this time whether it was established wholly with the Sun Valley subdivision or if there were portions dedicated to the county after the fact or perhaps created with parcel plats. But staff will report that information to the board.
Do you know what the width is going to be of the road that's left?
With the consideration of this abandonment, Supervisor Johnson, this would actually turn over Bison Road, if you will, at least that right-of-way to the entity abutting the Bison Road right-of-way.
Right, but I mean, we have enough right-of-way there for our traffic needs? I guess that's what.
Oh, good question. Bison Road provides basically right-of-way to adjacent parcels, which Bison has been developed only from the north end, from El Rodeo on south. So to the best of my knowledge, it is not a primary road of ingress and egress for traffic. So by turning over and extinguishing the right-of-way, we're turning it over to the petitioning the abandonment petitioner. The county would essentially, not have any reservation of right-of-way for Bison Road in this area, and that any future need for public ingress and egress would be dependent upon the adjacent property owners to develop. And I should emphasize that this action would contemplate an abandonment in such a manner that no properties would be would result in not having legal access to their parcels. That would still keep legal access to all adjacent parcels in play.
Those are the only questions I had, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second the motion.
Okay, motion to approve and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item number 30, approve the cancellation of the August 30th, 2016 election of precinct committee persons and appoint them in their positions filed for. Alan Temperate? Yes.
Madam Chair, my problem with this is, once again, we had the same problem, I don't know, 2 years ago or 4 years ago. Move to approve cancellation of the 30th and election of precinct committee persons and appoint them to positions filed for. These people ran for this job, and they need to be sent their thing as duly elected to that position, not appointed.
And they will. That's just the terminology, but appointment. They will receive the certificates as we did 2 years ago when we changed it around, which was the correct thing to do without a doubt. And as soon as you all hopefully approve it, then Nancy will send the certificates of election to all the precinct committee people that filed for this. The word appointment is just the term, because they don't go in front of, on a ballot, they don't go in front of the people, but they are now appointed as duly elected and with all the rights and privileges of an elected official, as we did 2 years ago.
Right. I guess it just needs to make sure that it says, we're appointing them as duly elected.
It will be the word, right. Yes, the word elected most definitely. That's on the template and ready to go.
That was the only question I had, Madam Chair.
Okay, I do have a question.
Sure.
Would this interfere at all with the privilege of being able to vote as an elected precinct committeeman as opposed to the ones that are being elected on a write-in ballot?
It does not. It is exactly the same thing. It's a way to save money for the county to not have to put this office on the ballot across possibly 24 precincts as we have now. If to do so, the way the law states, a separate ballot has to be made with precinct committee people along with the party offices, and a separate ballot besides that without precinct committee people for those independents who choose the Republican ballot to vote. Okay, so this is a way of saying, yep, you are it, as if they would have filled your name in. If they would have put the bubble in that particular time, you got all rights and privileges for the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Temperate? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the cancellation of the August 30th, 2016 election of precinct committee persons and appoint them as duly elected into the position they filed for.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item number 32, per ARS 42-111-53B, redeem the waivers of the applicants who missed the March 1st deadline so that they will be eligible for a property tax exemption for the 2016 tax year.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question comes back again. It says it right in the motion, it's a March deadline. How long are we going to continue to go past the deadlines that are set?
The answer is up to you as a supervisor, Supervisor Johnson. You've raised this issue each year, as I recall.
Yes.
And the statute 4211-101 through 4211-155 states that the applicant has until March 1st to apply. If they miss that deadline, the statute further goes on to say they can petition the board for approval beyond that deadline, conditioned on the fact that tax bills have not been levied, and that would be like in September. We have an opinion from Attorney Ekstrom that states that the board should approve all of those applicants after the March 1 deadline up until taxes are levied. And that's what we've been doing. We ask each applicant that misses that deadline to file a statement with us as to why they missed it. And the reasons are varied. They either were in the hospital, they were unaware of the law, or they were traveling, et cetera. So it's really the board's discretion as to how long you want to go forward with this.
And so then technically, September is the last time we're going to do it, so they have...
For this year, yes, sir, for the 2016 tax year. But we'll be back here next year.
Thank you, Mr. Fielder.
Yes,
That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Fielder?
Thank you.
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is number 37. This is under Supervisor Johnson. Discussion of possible action, Ray, the elimination of contract administrative changes along with the elimination of the procurement director being able to amend contracts up to $50,000 and the elimination of allowing the county administrator to amend contracts up to $10,000. And once again, Supervisor Johnson, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I brought this back. We had a discussion, I believe, last meeting when we were going over contract changes, and this, in my opinion, would further that. And I just brought it back for discussion if the board wants to do it. If they're not interested, fine with me.
Okay,
If I may, Madam Chair?
Supervisor Moss, go ahead.
I understand that Supervisor Johnson basically wants to make sure the board is more in charge, and that's something which I'm entirely sympathetic to. But at a certain point, we do have to allow our administrators and staff to make what I'll call day-to-day operating decisions, as long as they are not too extreme financially. And I will note that when it comes to these contract changes and the expenditures the county administrator or the finance director, not the finance director, procurement director may make, those are reported to us every month. So I really don't think that we should be upsetting the apple cart, especially as I view the system with board oversight has been working so well so long.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay. Administrator Hendricks, do you want to address this at all?
Madam Chairman, myself and staff understand that the board is the one that sets the policies. I believe the system is working very well as it currently exists. Quite possibly, we need to revisit the procurement, our procurement policies in regard to this particular issue and clarify it in those policies. But I fully understand that if the board wants to change direction and set a new policy, we'll certainly make it work and do the best we can to abide by what the board decides.
Thank you. That being said, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, I'll call one more time for a motion. Okay, we have no motion. The item will die on the floor. Going on to item number 38. This is under Supervisor Moss. Discussion of possible action, Ray, review reserve balances in funds that are sourced from county funds and use flexibility language for up to $1.7 million to meet county fiscal obligations and state shifts for fiscal year 2017, thus allowing an increase in contingency appropriation in the general fund. Supervisor Moss, I'll give you the floor on this. And if you could,
Thank you.
if you could speak just a little bit louder, we're having difficulty hearing you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time. Items 38 through 44 all come out of the meeting that we had, workshop that we had regarding the budget, when they asked for board input. I don't believe all these items were my idea. They're just the ones I took note of as we were having our workshop discussions. Number 38 is specifically targeted to the general idea that we would go into the next budget cycle with $1 million as our contingency. As the state legislature has given us some flexibility to sweep, which is not used in the, what I'll call the draft preliminary budget, I thought it might be well advised to take advantage of that sweeping language to increase the contingency for this next coming budget cycle year. Where those sweeps would come from and from what departments we would task the administration to review and investigate, but this is item 38 is designed to instruct the staff to build a budget around increasing the contingency up to $1.7 million in addition to the $1 million previously discussed, and to come back to the board as part of this budget process with where those sweeps would come from and what amounts.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Supervisor Moss, or would they like to hear from Pearl Loyd?
Well, I think, Madam Chair, the only questions I would have would be that I believe it's not as easy as just sweeping funds. I believe we have to have a need for those funds. We can't just place them into the general fund. I guess that would be my, I don't know if Supervisor Moss has something in mind that he wants to take funds to sweep to put into a need that we have.
Okay, that's point well taken.
If that question was for me, actually at this point of the item, it's to instruct staff in order to utilize how we could utilize those funds and to use other funds in order to increase our contingency. The exact language and the exact process, I think we would have to rely upon staff to put together between now and we enter into our final budget discussions. But I do think we have some financial flexibility that we're letting go by the wayside, and I think it would be incumbent upon us to instruct staff to take advantage of that, and the exact processes associated with that they would have to bring back to the board.
I guess, Madam Chair, with that, and Supervisor Moss, we have the set schedule. I believe July 18th is our adopted and a tentative budget, and I would guess that staff would be coming back at that time with those answers.
Okay, I believe that this item might be a little premature and may be answered during the regular budget process as it goes along. Ms. Loyd, can you confirm
We
that?
might want to confer with staff on that. My understanding from the workshop, Madam Chair, was that they wanted instructions from us to how to proceed. These items are designed only to give staff instructions to start basically setting a policy that they then will put into concrete for the staff putting the time and resources into developing into concrete proposals. So if we want to wait until July 18, if that's what staff thinks is appropriate, or if they're actually soliciting input from the board, which is what thought I heard at the workshop that we just attended a couple weeks back, we should probably confer with Ms. Loyd and Mr. Hendricks on.
Mr. Hendricks? Or Supervisor Watson, I guess
Thank you,
he's...
Chairman Bishop. I was wondering, I'd like to just have this addressed by our Finance Director, Coral Loyd. The contingency funds are one in which I keep an eye on diligently almost every day, and it's very concerning to me when it comes to the July, August, and September months, when we get down to the very minimum of the amount of revenue that we have. So I'd like to ask Ms. Loyd her opinion on moving this 1.7 to the contingency fund now.
Good morning, thank you. The information that, I agree with what Supervisor Moss stated, that we were looking for direction. Within the budget itself contained many, many pages, but each fund that was county sourced had some estimated fund balances in those. So if we were to utilize the flex language from any of those funds, we would specifically have to dedicate those funds to the amounts. 1.25 million can be for really anything that's controlled by the board, but the additional shifts would have to be to pay the Arizona State Hospital cost, to pay the balance of the juvenile corrections that have been swept, and then the Department of Revenue. So we would have to sweep them from other funds, dedicate them to paying those items, and then with the extra 1.25, then we can do contingency or some other dedication. At the workshop, the question was asked, what types of funds would you be able to pull from if this went forward? And again, those have to be county-sourced funds. That could include the surcharges of the recorder charges, the treasurer charges, our election fee charges. We have some environmental health IT charges that are assessed on certain types of user fees. The districts, the library district, flood control, TV, and those kinds of things. So we've got a list that we could expand, if you will, by your tentative budget. Staff's recommendation, again, is to, not sweep all of those funds and then move them to the general fund and not have them available to support the funds for which the charges were initially assessed.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
And just to clarify and to notice why these items are on the agenda is, if we had, at our workshop, we had recommendations from individuals, and before staff felt comfortable in moving forward, we know that the board acts as a collective, and that we wanted clear direction from the board that you actually wanted to move forward and direct staff to explore these individual items. With that said, when we brought that budget forward to the board, what we did that we believe the board itself wanted us to take a look at is examine each individual contingency that we had in our service budgets or whatever budgets we had, court budgets. And we took a hard look and provide justifications, solid financial justifications on why we needed those funds to continue us through the year, to be able to pay our bills, and why we needed those funds for emergency contingencies. And we made the best recommendation from a professional standpoint that we possibly could on what those fund balances needed to be. We also talked about funds that may be discretionary with sweep language, like district funds that we believed, instead of adjusting those district funds and hurting what the purpose those funds were established for, that we would adjust the either maintenance issues on those district funds or capital improvement issues on those district funds and provide the service to a level that those district funds can currently fund. So the other funds that we identified, the enterprise funds, those enterprise funds had sufficient needs that we did not want to touch those contingencies or fund balances, because those funds are needed for future improvements and for maintenance issues and to support a 5-year capital plan for those funds. So what I wanted to make clear to the board is, from a Coral's professional financial perspective, to keep the board at least and this organization at least on a good financial foundation. We provided a minimum recommendation, but the best minimum recommendation that staff believe they could provide the board. To go back again now and look for other ways to cut, we don't believe from a staff perspective that would be financially responsible. However, if the board so directed us to do that, we work for you all. On the other funds, like HERF funds and the waste tire fund that was talked about previously, those are state funds and those aren't subject to sweeps. Anyway, thank you, Coral, for letting me butt in there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Okay.
Madam Chair, I guess the only other thing I'd ask of Ms. Loyd would be the sweeping of funds, while it was authorized by the state, we have to justify that back to the state why we sweep the funds. So if we sweep funds, we can't just sweep them to put into the general fund or a contingency fund. I mean, you said we need to go into those certain places, but that
Right.
frees up money. It's my understanding that state wants us to show a need before we sweep the funds. We just can't go, oh, well, we've got this sweeping ability, so we're going to sweep it and do something else with it. Is that your opinion, or am I wrong on that?
Well, for the items that were listed there as other state cost shifts, I absolutely agree with that. For the 1.25 million, I believe that, we could justify that we've got other expenses in the general fund, whether or not that goes to contingency or it's utilized for the current year for something else or in the future year. I believe that Supervisor Moss indicated that there was a 1 million contingency that we were budgeting, but it's actually 2 million. We utilized 1 this year, so we would be replenishing that with these monies, if you will, to bring it to 2 million of actually cash funded. I don't disagree with your statement. I think that that's a much better stance. We have to report this to the JLBC, and I believe that it does need to be a letter of indication of the need, so that Mohave County isn't put in a position of continued statements that we don't raise our tax rate or our tax rate is low, that we haven't levied our full amount of excise tax and some items like that. So I agree with you, although, excuse me, having a 2 million contingency is definitely a very low amount. I think that's about 2.5%, so we could justify that as well.
That's all I had, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Angus.
Okay, you can hear me. Coral, I'm still a little confused. So the ones that we have to justify and talk to the state about, those are the funds like the TV district and the district funds, but just reallocating vehicle replacement, we don't have to justify that to the state.
That's correct.
Right. So there is a difference between, not all funds are the same.
That's
so
correct,
when we talk
yes.
about sweeps, we're only talking about sweeping from the special districts and the special funds.
Yeah, I would say that the enterprise funds and the special district funds. But for the internal service funds, you're correct. Those are completely subject to the board's discretion.
Right. I just think it's important that we clarify that.
Thank you. I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If there is no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item 38 and direct staff to review our reserve balances that are sourced from county funds and to take advantage of flexibility language of up to $1.7 million to meet county fiscal obligations and state cost shifts in fiscal year 2017, thus allowing an increase in contingency appropriations in the general fund, and report back to the board at the earliest available opportunity as to what staff's recommendations would be in those areas.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
And I will vote in opposition, so motion fails. Item number 39, discussion of possible action may confer with the EBT board to consider reducing the estimated for fiscal year 2017 ending fund balance to the actual balance by way of the premium holiday and appropriate and reserve the funds in the FY 2017 tentative budget to more fully fund economic development in Mohave County. Hey, Supervisor Moss, this is under your name. You want to tell us what you're wanting to do here?
Yes, this also comes out of the workshop. We have a recommendation from our actuary that our EBT funds be capped at $6.9 million. We are above that. Over the course of the last several months, we have had dealings with issues of economic development and funds necessary to attract high-paying jobs in large numbers to Mohave County. And it occurs to me that I would bring to the board that we reduce the EBT funds in cooperation with the EBT board by declaring a holiday in order to generate funds necessary to fund economic development, so our economic development department would understand that they have those funds available to them subject to board approval. We would be, under this proposal, only coordinating with the EBT board for purposes of reducing it to the $6.9 million, which is the high that the actuary recommended, and which I believe is a very conservative number based upon my understanding, as right now the EBT board is, the trust is overfunded well beyond what the actuary recommended as a high.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Angius.
Thank you, Supervisor Moss. At this time, I'm going to have to be in opposition to this idea. We just recently voted as the board, I'm the chairman of this trust, to allow the funding holiday, and for the purpose of funding the $500,000 for economic development that was presented to us with the opportunity for Dot Foods. And we went above and beyond that, which was going to allow the county to take an extra $1 million for pretty much anything that we as a board deemed we needed. And that just happened. The EBT trust is different than other things. It is the Employees Benefit Trust, and there are many, many unknowns of what could happen. I understand, I wasn't around, but I understand a decade ago that this trust was severely underfunded, and I'm sure Supervisor Johnston could tell us about that. And it's taken many, many years to get it back to a healthy place, and that coupled with some of the new initiatives that we're doing, we hope to keep it up. But once you take it out, you can't put it back in. So if we're going to just have money sitting someplace in hopes that another economic development opportunity will come and we can use it, I'd rather it sit in EBT. We can always call a special meeting of the trust. It's a very conservative trust. We had a very long discussion just to do the last one that we did, and I'm in agreement with that. So although I understand Supervisor Moss's intentions and agree with them, we can always use it if the need arises. But just to take it out without having something for it to go to, I don't think I could support at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Watson, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Supervisor Moss,
Yeah,
Watson is yielding to you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't see Supervisor Watson. I apologize if I cut him off. I just wanted to respond briefly to Supervisor Angus's comments. My view is, yes, there was a period of time that the EBT was underfunded, and that was a precarious point in the county's history. We're currently at a point where the EBT trust is well overfunded pursuant to our actuary and professional advisors. And rather than have that money sit there when it's over the maximum recommended limit, I believe it would be more prudent policy for us to invest that money and establishing an economic development trust, which Mr. Bennett Bradley would then know is available for his use, would be, I think, beneficial when it comes to attracting jobs and businesses in the Mohave County. Now, I do agree with Supervisor Angius. We can achieve the same result by waiting, seeing if an opportunity arises, and then acting on it via a series of special meetings. But that doesn't really do our economic development department much in the way of good when it comes to them knowing that there's a source of funds available, whether or not the county supervisors would make it available to them. So I think we're putting two steps into an economic development process when it really should be more of a one-step process. But I do appreciate and concur in many of Supervisor Angus's concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And Supervisor Watson?
Thank you, Chairman Bishop. The balance in the trust fund being a little bit more than what is identified by the actuaries as being sufficient to run that operation, to me is just a best guess. I've seen Mohave County in years of duress when many of our employees are at extreme ends with cancer and other items like that. I've seen times in which this fund was lacking, and I believe that was around the 2000 era when Supervisor Johnson was coming on board. I am of the mind to consistently be overfunded in this account. If we do find an opportunity for investment, such as we did with Dot Foods, I'd certainly go along with that thought process. If there was something there that was solid and looking at an investment in Mohave County, I could certainly look at that. But I believe, just to be on the conservative side, I don't mind rolling the dice with my money, but I'm not going to roll the dice with Mohave County's money. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item 39 of the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second? Do we have a second for item number 39? Okay. Motion dies for lack of a second. Going on to item number 40. Discussion on possible action, Ray, direct staff to reduce the capital reserve for the vehicle replacement fund for 5 years, 2 to 3 years, and include in the tentative budget a transfer of any excess from the vehicle replacement fund to the general fund contingency. I do have one speaker signed up on this. Mr. Steve Robinson, I'll let you go first. You have 3 minutes, and we'll need your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Stephen Robinson, Golden Valley. Madam Chair, board members, staff. In 2004, following a period of severe financial instability, the county saw some windfalls in excess revenues. At that point, they put $3 million of those revenues into the vehicle purchase fund because the policy was at that time not to set aside any money on a regular basis from any of the departments. But this was simply a delayed emergency that meant when that fund was all used, they'd need more money. So the county wisely established a policy of charging each department for the vehicles they use, and thus they replenish this fund on a routine basis. Over the last 10 years, that fund built up to $7 million, of which last year the board took $3 million back out, which was the original $3 million put in. Now the county wants to build it back up to that $3 million. And I looked at what would happen in my own personal finances if I had a windfall or had saved $50,000 for a vehicle purchase, and then I had to plan on a vehicle purchase 5 years from now. At $40,000 for that vehicle, I would save another $8,000 a year until 5 years from now. If there was a fleet of vehicles, let's say 5 vehicles, and in that 5 years, my goal would be to have that $50,000 rebuilt. In a fleet of vehicles, 5 vehicles, let's say, that you purchase one a year, you would also have 50,000 times 5. You'd have to have $250,000 in the account. If you bought those vehicles on a routine, regular basis, you would never need more for those 5 vehicles, more than 125% of the money necessary for buying vehicles. If we only buy about $1 million a year, which is the case, we don't need any more than $1.25 to $1.5 million in the vehicle replacement fund. Supervisor Watson, you said you want to be really conservative with the county's money. I would like to remind you, it's not the county's money, it's the taxpayers' money. And if we don't need to have 5 years or 6 years worth of money in the bank to purchase vehicles, it's much better in the citizens' bank, in their pockets. And when you do need the money, then that's when you tax the people. You don't tax them ahead of time because you might need the money, or you might need we've only bought $1 million a year in the last...
Mr. Robinson, I certainly understand where those revenues come from the taxpayers. I pay a lot of taxes myself. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Supervisor Moss, this is under your name. It's all been explained to us very well by Mr. Robinson, but I'm sure you've got some comments to make, so the floor is yours.
Yes, it's just this. We have a 5-year replacement fund, which in my view is somewhat excessive. I believe that the county can operate very well on a 2 to 3 year replacement fund. And if we were to adjust our revenue collection to take that into account, then there would be more monies available for both contingency and other operating expenses to the county while still having a fairly significant cushion. So that's why I brought this to the board. Rather than having a 5-year replacement fund, I believe the board should consider a 2 to 3 year replacement fund. And what policy we elect to follow is going to determine on this board, and then we'll send it to staff.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Angius?
Yes, thank you. I am in total agreement with Supervisor Moss on this. I do think 5 years is excessive, and something like vehicle replacement, when we're always sort of, worrying about how much money we have in contingency, and the finance department's always worried. This is one place that we can absolutely, without really breaking a sweat, take from. So I'm hoping that my fellow supervisors stand in agreement with this, and so we can direct staff to reduce that capital reserve. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we didn't have this fund, it would be coming out of the contingency fund to fund new vehicles. The 5-year program, when I got in, county employees were driving vehicles that had over 200,000 miles. It wasn't safe for them. It wasn't safe for our sheriff's deputies. Obviously, it caused concerns with the public, who the sheriff's deputies were trying to respond to assist. We worried about, not only our female staff, but our male staff too, because our county is so large. When they traveled to different parts of the county, if they broke down and not having communications in a lot of areas, people would refuse to even take our motor pool cars to Phoenix because they were afraid that they wouldn't make it down and back. I think the 5-year plan is what business usually has. They have a 5-year plan. And the way it's been set up now is that we're basically putting the costs back onto the departments, which kind of runs up their bills, because they pay for their vehicles a monthly charge, and at the end of that 5-year period, the vehicle is able to be replaced from the money that was collected. So if you took it to a 2-year or 3-year, unless you're going to double the amount of money they're putting in, they're not going to have the money there to pay for the vehicles. But I believe that when I watch the cities, when they keep deferring new fire engines, new police cars, new vehicles for their people, the county has done an outstanding job, and I would consider leaving it the way it is. I think it's worked out very well for us.
Okay, thank you. County Administrator Hendricks, do you have anything to add?
Madam Chairman and board members, I might have to call Coral up here to assist me with this, but I believe she sent out a very, very well done memo when this issue came up to try to explain our vehicle replacement policy. And we do have a vehicle replacement policy, echoing what the supervisors said in the old days, which I lived through. Planning and zoning had extra vehicles because they never could, from day to day, count on being able to get into a vehicle and turn the key and have it run, or not be stranded out someplace. So we actually were able to right-size our fleet through this vehicle use policy, make our fleet safer through this vehicle use policy, make our fleet more reliable, and make us more productive with less through this vehicle use policy. So I believe having adequate equipment, whether it be computers or vehicles, or on all fronts, is essential for a well-run organization. When you start detracting from that, you start detracting from the organization and making it less than what it was. What we tried to portray to the board, it was an easy, understandable graph that showed that unlike what Mr. Robinson stated, we don't purchase a certain number of vehicles every year. That varies. Some years, like this year, we have a heavy purchase. Some years, like the previous year, we had a lighter purchase. You know, it varies from 600,000 to over, I believe, 3 million is what your chart showed, which is incredible. So Coral actually did a projection, probably with Steve Letowski's assistance, on how many vehicles we would be projecting to have to purchase each year up to 6 years. And it shows that, unfortunately, and contrary to our not standing up for transferring that $3 million out of the vehicle replacement fund, after 6 years, we're going to be upside down in that fund by the tune of...
We would hit zero within 6 years.
Next year would be how much of a deficit after that 6?
2023, 24.
And could you go...
$2 million.
$2 million in the hole that we would have to make up. The following year would be what?
$2.5 million.
$2.5 million in the hole. And what that we're trying to express to the board is that money has to be made up someplace. And we've also entered into discussions with staff that, Steve, I'm sorry we took that $3 million. You're going to have to revisit our vehicle replacement fund charges so that we don't have that deficit in the future. So not only are we looking at not removing money from that vehicle replacement fund to keep this county healthy and operating, functioning on a certain level, we're actually looking at augmenting that fund at some time in the near future so that we won't have those deficits in the future. Coral, did you have anything that you'd like to add?
You both have summarized it very well. The only thing that I may add is that certainly Public Works went back and looked at the schedule again, and thanks to Public Works and also Judy and Finance for putting together a lot of the information for us to analyze. They could go back and relook at that schedule if there's an older car, but it's got low mileage. It has to have high mileage and be a very old car to replace. So we could extend the years of some of the vehicles. I think the estimate is about $1.5 million that we could move out into future years, year 6, 7, 8. But that's just a temporary $1.5 million aid. So you're still looking at the same item. Another item, I guess, that I could add is that it's very typical for any type of financing that you're looking at a 5-year financing plan. That's very, very common. If you're actually having to borrow the money, then you'd be required by the banking industry to have a 5-year plan in the bank. That's very common. So I think that this is a very common element. We did go back and pull all of the federal guidelines because for the internal service funds, we have to also follow the 2 CFR Part 225, which addresses internal service funds. And even by the federal guidelines, we are allowed to support in reserves a 5-year capital reserve. So we would, do our best from the staff perspective of managing that fleet and not having to have that fund grow to $7 or $8 million. But there is, by just the 5- and 6-year standard, there is justification for that. But we would certainly be working with Public Works and the departments to evaluate their use to try to mitigate that as much as possible.
Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're worrying me some with talking about low mileage, older vehicles. When this was put into place, we used the 5 years and with the mileage, and that's because we were able to cut down on our mechanic staff and use service departments from Ford or Chevy or whoever we buy them from, Chrysler, Dodge. And so we were able to cut back on personnel. When we're selling our vehicles now, we're actually getting above the blue book because of the maintenance schedules that we have. That's documented that we can do. And I think it's incumbent upon our public works and to make sure that if they have a older, low mileage vehicle, that it gets rotated someplace where it gets more mileage. I think you're going to be causing a problem if you go past the maintenance that we've paid for, because then we don't have the mechanics to do it. It's going to cost us a lot more money, plus the money that we're making when we sell the vehicle is going to drop drastically. So that's just something to consider there. That's all, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Angius? Go ahead.
First of all, nobody wants anyone riding around in broken down vehicles, okay? Just wanted to get that out of the way. When back in the days you were talking about when everybody was driving around in these, over-miled cars, how much money did you have put aside? Did you ever have, was that 2 years, 3 years, or no years? So, what we're saying is, what is the need? We're not a business. Supervisor Johnson said that that's what businesses do, but we're not a business. That's why we budget year to year. And that's what our citizens expect us to do. I think it is excessive. And these things get replenished. You act like that's the money and that's going to just disappear. It gets replenished. And I think it's not responsible of us to keep this amount in this fund. And I'm going to agree with Supervisor Moss and ask that we look into bringing it down.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Supervisor Moss?
The money that we're discussing does not vanish because we reduced it from 5 years to 2 to 3 years. It goes into the contingency. So the county is going to have the same number of dollars available to it, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's just where it's going to be located. And by directing staff to reduce it to a 2 or a 3 year program, the balance would then go into a contingency. The taxpayers would still have every single dollar available to it that we collected from them. It's just that the county would have more flexibility in meeting the needs going into the future. If there's no needs to be met going into the future, that money's still there to buy vehicles, partly from the vehicle replacement fund, partly from the contingency. If there's an emergency of some sort or an untoward expense, then that money will be in the contingency. So regardless, the money is available to buy vehicles, or it's available to buy vehicles and to meet unforeseen needs of the county. That's what all this item 40 is designed to do, is to give the county and our taxpayers the assurances that we have the flexibility to meet their needs going forward for the next budget year. And I think by reducing it to 2 to 3 years, we do increase our contingency. We still have a healthy vehicle replacement fund, and we can still achieve all the objectives of county governance.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to state that I'm one of those people that were driving broken down vehicles. And as a deputy sheriff, I was broken down in Golden Valley with a interesting group of motorcycle enthusiasts, and I was quite uncomfortable. It took about an hour to get a unit out there to rescue me. So that's just one story. There's many stories of county employees that were broken down out in the field, and it took a long time to get a tow truck out there or someone to pick you up and then get that vehicle back. But I think of all the programs that I've seen that Mohave County has done, this is the one that I am probably the most proud of. And I think a 5-year business plan just makes sense, and I don't think our contingency fund was meant to fund different programs. I think contingency funds, in my understanding, is to fund emergencies, things we're not counting on that show up, and we have to draw from the contingency funds during those times. So I would rather, my personal opinion is to keep the vehicle replacement fund in a separate fund so that we can see where we are and we know that money is not extra money in a contingency fund. It's money that's actually allocated for vehicles. So that's all I have to say, and the fact that in the year 2023, our fund is going to be at zero unless we make some adjustments is very concerning. So that's the end of my comment. Does anybody else have anything to say before I call for the vote? Supervisor Watson.
Chairman Bishop, yes. I heard the comment earlier that certainly that Mohave County is not a business. And certainly I agree to that because what we have to offer as Mohave County is excellent, top-notch service and ability to respond. And in doing that, we have to have the best fleet possible in order to achieve it. The best business practices that I've achieved over the years in private business is an excellent opportunity here to continue our 5-year program. When we used it in our business practices, it was the very best practice we used then. We're taking it, using it now. Back years ago, I would tell the folks that were employed by the companies that I was with, if we saw any municipal or county vehicles on the road stranded, to stop and help them. And we often carried jumper cables and water and those types of things to help them out. I certainly don't want to see us in that practice again, and this is one of the best practices that I believe that Mohave County can do for the citizens of Mohave County for the best actual response and immediate response to any of those types of emergencies. Thank you.
Okay. County Manager Hendricks.
I just want to make a clarification too for the public is that basically in the vehicle replacement fund, the amount of money that's placed in that every year is roughly $1 million for vehicle replacement. And the 4 point whatever million that we're holding, that doesn't purchase 5 years worth of vehicles. I can't really say we've got a 5-year vehicle replacement plan. We don't. We collect enough money to sustain our program is all we do, and that's all we're proposing. That 4 point whatever million dollars in the next 2 years, if that's all we had and we didn't have any revenues, we would be able to purchase between 2 to 3 years worth of vehicles, and that's all, not 5 years worth of vehicles. So it's kind of misleading if we misled the board in any way saying we had a 5-year replacement plan. That's not true. We're trying to have a sustainable vehicle replacement plan, and that's why we collect $1 million worth a year, and in the analysis it included that $1 million worth a year.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve item 40 of the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Supervisor Angius. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed?
Aye.
And I'm opposed. Supervisor Angius, I didn't hear your vote.
Aye.
Okay. Motion
Can you hear
failed.
me?
Yes, the motion has failed. Going on to item 41, discussion of possible action may include in the Environmental Health Department's tentative budget $150,000 for spring 2017 pest abatement measures. Supervisor Moss, this is yours again. You have the floor.
Yes, this year we had to take $150,000 out of contingency in order to deal with some pest issues that arose unexpectedly. Because we waited so late into the season, it was $150,000. I believe if we budget for $150,000 early and we had to deal with the problem in March, assuming we're talking about a mosquito pest at that time, it can be dealt with much more cost effectively, and $150,000 would be the upper limits. My information currently as to the last $150,000 that has not been expended yet, we're still waiting for contacts and some conversations with the Mohave Indian tribe, which I believe our county administrator is handling. But if we budget $150,000, we'll be in much better position to deal with matters earlier rather than later, which would be more cost effective.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Supervisor Johnson?
Yes, Madam Chair. I believe that the way we have it set up now is fine. I believe that if an emergency arises, then we can pull the money and place it in there. I have government seems to, if you have money sitting somewhere, you've got a tendency to want to spend it all the time. If you have to go and request it from contingency, you don't. So I would just soon leave it the way it is, and if you need it, then just pull it.
Okay. Supervisor Watson?
I'd just like to ask our Administrator Hendricks, what the proposed cost is. I know that $150,000 was budgeted and allocated from the last meeting 2 weeks ago. I understand that there might be a lesser cost involved.
In analyzing the issue and the amount of spraying that's necessary to cover the private land down in the Mohave Valley area, the price looks like it's going to come in at around roughly $50,000, and that's for 2 applications. With that said, I need to make the board aware that we're late in the game this year. You know, that if we did start mosquito spraying next year, we might, and the board wanted to move in that direction, we would probably be looking at more than 2 applications. So the price is kind of misleading on that $50,000. What one application will do to us at the very most is to last us 30 days, and then the application would have to be repeated, it's my understanding. Also, we're looking at a minimum application of 10 pounds per acre, and I believe the original recommendation was about 20 pounds per acre. So if you're looking at trying to spray throughout the summer, you're probably looking at the figure Supervisor Moss is using.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, are we talking about just spraying for emergency purposes, or are we just going to just start spraying to kill mosquitoes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So are we abating this as a routine, or is this something that changes based on the weather and the season?
Madam Chair, may I have a word?
Sure, go ahead.
My understanding is, and perhaps the Environmental Health Department can clarify this, is just because mosquitoes exist, we do not spray. There's a certain count, and I believe it's 50 per trap, that as long as it's 50 mosquitoes or less per trap, that's considered to be a natural, normal level, which does not create an undue health impact, and we leave it alone. If it's more than 50 per trap, that's the trigger that environmental health comes to us and says, we need to spray because we're getting at a mosquito count where there's a serious public health issue. So just because mosquitoes are present, we don't spray. It's the quantity of mosquito present over a certain geographic area that triggers environmental health. This budgeted for amount would not change that. If it's a normal mosquito year where it's less than 50 per trap, we would do nothing. If it's an unusual year like this year was, combined with the concerns regarding the Zika virus and whatnot that's working its way westward, I believe that we would do something. So preparing for it, I think, would reassure the public that we are not just ignoring them and that we're going to act when we have an emergency, that we're going to act immediately when we get that 50 or more per trap, as opposed to going through the normal processes, which could take up to a month or so, where the public is exposed to these pests in unhealthy levels. But I would defer to environmental health if they're present as to whether that's the plan. That's my understanding of what they've said in the past.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
We have someone from environmental health coming to the podium to address some of those questions and concerns. So Supervisor
Madam Chair,
Angius,
can you hear me?
Yes, I was just talking, and I'm now recognizing you, so go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you couldn't hear me. I had some phone issues. I had to change the phones. I apologize. I just want to say that this is not just spraying for spraying's sake. This is a public health matter, and of all the things that government does, this is one of the most important, and our citizens need to know that we are ahead. This is not something that you play catch-up on. You need to be ahead of this. With all the different diseases out there and the things we know and don't know and what's coming over the border, we've got to be ready. In light of our last discussion and the things that we feel is important, I think this is very important. So I think we should fund this as much as we need to fund it.
Okay, thank you. Patty Mead.
Madam Chair and board members, yes, we do fog and or larvicide depending on the number of mosquitoes, which is usually 300 or more per trap, and we're also on the type of mosquito. I wanted to clarify that, but we fog based on that. Larviciding is something that we do in a preventive way. We just haven't had the number of complaints the last few years like we've had this year. We've never had this many complaints on mosquitoes in the time I've been here with the county in 20 years.
Madam Chair, has it reached an emergency? Have you declared an emergency?
No, but I think it could be a potential emergency with the mosquito-borne illnesses that we have. We've had a problem with West Nile virus in the past. We've seen a decline in that right now, but we do have an imminent Zika virus concern coming up, and with all the standing water everywhere, it is a potential public health crisis, yes.
Okay, so the answer is no, you haven't declared it.
No, not now.
Now,
In the past, in the budget, when West Nile virus first became an issue nationwide, I believe we had 30,000 transferred from the general fund into the environmental health budget, and it became a regular part of our budget for 4 or 5 years. And then the finance director at the time during budget meetings said, let's take this money out of your fund and you just ask for it when you need it. So that's what we have done, but we haven't needed anything over the last 5 or 6 years. We haven't had any mosquito complaints, and the traps that we've set haven't showed any results. So this year kind of came as a surprise to us. We went from having 1 to 2 complaints a year to jumping into the hundreds of complaints.
right, but that's
And
kind
our
of like
traps
what we
showing-
were talking about before with the other item where why leave all the money in your department when it can be in the contingency, we can pull it out. But you have the authority as the head of your department, without the approval of the board, to declare an emergency and do whatever you need to do, correct?
Yes, sir, but I would want your approval with that before going forward.
Right, but I mean, you have that authority. I mean, if we say, no, we're not going to do something. Now, are you looking at anything? Because I brought this up last time, and now we're talking about next year where we have people who have standing water or anything else where we go in and try to mitigate that.
Yes,
It seems to be the farmland, and is somebody going to be meeting with these farmers and say, hey, you need to readjust how you're doing your watering or whatever. You can't leave water standing on there to breed mosquitoes. That, it's not up to the citizens of Mohave County to spray to, make you money.
Yes, we're exploring our options with the county attorney's office with that and with Zika virus, which are mosquitoes that tend to localize around people's property. So yes, that's being looked into.
And then the same thing where we have something because, like Supervisor, I think Watson and Moss both mentioned, if we do not have the Indian nations participating, are we just wasting our money on spraying?
Yes, sir, I just got notified that they're meeting today at 1 to discuss their plans.
That's all I had. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I also have concerns. If we're spraying, we're spending county taxpayers' money on mosquito abatement, but the tribe is not participating and the federal government is not spraying the marsh. Is it really doing any good? Because mosquitoes can travel 40 miles from one location to another. So that's one of my concerns. And the farmers leaving that standing water, are they putting any money into the abatement program? I mean, can we recoup any of our funds by fining farmers for not being conservative on their water needs? I'm not sure about that, but it's something that I think we should be looking into. And I'm curious as to how many cases Mohave County has seen with West Niles and Zika.
We have no current cases of either one right now.
Okay.
We have had in the past, not of Zika, but of West Nile virus, but not recently.
Well, that's good. You mentioned that there's 5 or 6 years that we didn't do any mosquito abatement at all. What caused the change? And will that change?
I honestly can't answer that. I don't know. It caught us by surprise this year. We just haven't had we've had a few complaints here and there, but nothing like this year. It's just been crazy, but it's all localized in the Fort Mohave, Bullhead City area. We've had 2 complaints in Lake Havasu City and none in Kingman.
Could it also be a surprise next year when the count is down and we don't need to do the abatement?
Yes, ma'am, it could.
It's kind of unpredictable, is it not?
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, if there's no further discussion, Director Hendricks.
Just
Director, I forget
That's
who
all
you are
right.
today.
That's all right.
County
Sometimes I
Administrator
do also.
Hendricks.
I just wanted to remind the board that Supervisor Watson's motion to approve the spraying was contingent upon the tribe doing a similar act down there on their farmland. So
That's right. Thank
we
you.
should know today.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item 41, any future application to be consistent with the CDC guidelines.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion dies, or motion fails. A vote of 3 opposed to 2 in favor. Going on to item number 42. Discussion and possible action, Ray, include in the assessor's tentative budget $32,746 for a half-time office clerk position for the Lake Havasu field office and a half-time office clerk position for the Bullhead City field office, and coordinate and cross-train with the treasurer and recorder's office. Supervisor Moss.
Yes, this also came out of the workshop where the assessor had requested a half-time clerk for both Bullhead City and for Lake Havasu in order to meet its needs. During that conversation, I recollected that we had an issue with the treasurer's office and that they wanted to run part-time offices, but did not have the personnel, and one of their security requirements is 2 employees. And it occurred to me that we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone by giving the assessor what they wanted, which was their half-time employees, both in Havasu and in Bullhead City, but require that that assessor be cross-trained with the treasurer's office, so during tax season they could fulfill multiple duties. And that's why this item is on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Hendricks.
And Assessor Fielder can certainly agree or disagree with me if he so chooses, but when we entered into the discussion with Ken Fielder regarding his budget, he prioritized what he requested, and his number 1 priority was the software, which is a tremendous expense for the county. Now, that software cost is over and above what his normal budget was, so it was a cost that we would be bearing over the next several years. So we're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This software will actually allow him to keep more people in the office doing the same or similar work and not have to put people in the field. That's the whole intent of this software. So when we asked him, does he absolutely need these new employees? He said, Mike, I don't absolutely need them. I'd like to have them. So it was a like-to request, not a absolutely need request, and he did believe that this software would assist him in not having such a strong need for the additional employees. So we negotiated with what we believed was the board's intent, is to try to come up with a balanced budget, and try to do that we had to try to keep people as close to their last year's budget as humanly possible. And the assessor was one of the budgets that were actually increased substantially because of the software request. With the comment that utilizing similar people for the treasurer and the assessor's office, and having staff work with them to do that, what I would request the board to recognize is that the assessor and the treasurer are elected officials. I think they've gotten the message, and as elected officials, staff doesn't have any authority over them or have anything. We can certainly try to help facilitate, but we can't direct them to share staff or do anything along that line. But I think they've got the information from the board that the board would like to see that, and I think they could move forward with that. And I would ask the chairman to ask Ken if he agrees or disagrees with mine, if he wants to make a comment.
Okay, Mr. Fielder is walking to the podium. Good morning, Ken.
Madam Chairman, County Administrator Hendricks, it is true that in our budget workshop last week, we presented the 6 initiatives that we had requested at the initial budget meeting. It is also true that 5 of those initiatives were not approved, with the caveat that you would support or at least carry forward the request to the board to support pictometry. We agree that these 2 half-time people are non-essential. They would be cost-effective, but non-essential. We also have had considerable pushback from the treasurer's office in trying to discuss cooperation and a workout. So I think it's best at this point in time that this idea die, and we move forward with our request at the July 17th meeting to have pictometry approved.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I do have a question for Mr. Fielder.
Yes, go ahead.
I do understand the difference between essential and cost-effective, and giving you these 2 employees, half-time employees, would be cost-effective but is not essential to the running of your office. My concern is that I've heard from you that there is some pushback from the treasurer's office regarding the sharing of these employees, so there could be offices during tax season in Bullhead and Lake Havasu City. What form of pushback have you seen from the treasurer's office?
Supervisor Moss, I received a copy of a memo that I believe was directed to Finance Director Loyd that indicated that the treasurer believed that they had to have 2 full-time employees working 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And I don't think that was, I don't think that's what you contemplated when you suggested that the assessor and the treasurer and the recorder could share an employee. The way I interpret the treasurer's memo is that, like I said once before, they felt they needed 2 dedicated employees full-time Monday through Friday. And to me, that meant that this opportunity to share was certainly not on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Fielder. I am very disappointed to hear that. But thank you for your comments.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
If I could,
Supervisor Watson.
Mike could clarify that a little bit, Mr. Fielder. Possibly one of the items that the Treasurer's Office is concerned about is safety and security, and by having a half person in each of the offices trying to do 3 jobs was not conducive to what they were trying to provide as far as security is concerned. That was what I heard last year.
I understand that.
But I think... If I may, Madam Chair?
Just one second. Mr. Fielder was still speaking.
Sure.
I'm just simply saying that as a former banker, there are different ways to provide security, and I would think that if you had a camera with a recording device that recorded the transactions, that you should be able to police the activity at the counter.
I agree. I was just sharing what happened last year.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Moss, the floor is yours now.
Yes, and I'm going to piggyback on what Assessor Fielder and Supervisor Watson said. The treasurer last year was considering 2-week office openings, 2 weeks in Havasu, 2 weeks in Bullhead City, and there was not a 8 to 5 operation for those 2 weeks. It occurs to me if the assessor had a half-time employee in Lake Havasu and a half-time employee in Bullhead City, that for 2 weeks those employees could combine to have part-time office hours, 2 bodies, as the treasurer says she needs, in Lake Havasu, and then for 2 weeks have 2 bodies in Lake Havasu or in Bullhead City for 2 weeks, thereby fulfilling the treasurer's desire to open up offices in Bullhead City and Lake Havasu, and doing it in cooperation with the assessor's office on a very cost-effective basis. So why it must be 8 to 5 immediately in these budget crunches, and why we can't cooperate between departments is beyond me. But I think item 42 would be a huge step forward in solving the lack of services being provided in both Bullhead City and Lake Havasu, and I'm somewhat bemused by the fact that there's opposition to that.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Moss. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote, or call for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item 42, conditioned upon the assessor's office and the treasurer's office meeting and concurring upon an agreed-upon plan that meets the treasurer's concerns but does allow for office hours at least 2 weeks out of each year in Lake Havasu cities and Bullhead cities for purposes of tax collection.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Hearing none, I'll ask again, is there a second on this motion?
Madam Chair, can I have a motion to discuss?
Yes.
I just want some clarity.
Have a motion to discuss. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right.
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Supervisor Angus.
Did Mr. Fielder say that he requested that this item not be passed? Did I hear that correctly?
That was my understanding, but he's approaching the podium. He'll clarify that for you.
Chairman Bishop, Supervisor Angus, Supervisor Moss stated that he understands the difference between non-essential and cost effectiveness. As the supervisor of the assessor's office, the manager of the assessor's office, I believe the move to have 2 half-time employees would be cost-effective, but in light of the discussion and in light of the memo that I received from the treasurer, Cindy Cox, I don't think that the cooperation idea is going to work, and therefore I'm recommending to the board this morning that that item not necessarily be passed, that it not be passed. Does that answer your, yes, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And if I may, Madam Chair?
Supervisor Moss.
The motion I placed on the floor takes into account the potential lack of cooperation from the treasurer's office. If the treasurer refuses to cooperate, there'd be no monies expended on these half-time positions. If the treasurer does cooperate, then we can make the assessor's office more cost-effective while at the same time providing office hours for the treasurer's office in both Lake Havasu City and in Bullhead City during the tax season. Whether this goes past the point of being budgeted would be entirely dependent upon the treasurer's decision-making process.
Okay, then I'll second your motion.
So Supervisor Moss, I'm confused. Was that long dissertation your motion?
My motion occurred prior to Supervisor Angus's second for discussion, and it was to approve item 42, conditioned upon the treasurer's and the assessor's office meeting and agreeing upon a plan that the Bullhead City office and Lake Havasu City office would be open for treasurer purposes at least 2 weeks out of every year by utilizing these 2 part-time positions. Whether the treasurer elects to take advantage of that opportunity or not would be entirely dependent upon the treasurer, as my belief from Assessor Fielders is that he's willing to work with the treasurer, but that's not necessarily mutual.
You have a second on that, I think, from,
Okay, we have a motion. We do have a second. All those in favor?
well, I have discussion.
Aye.
Supervisor Watson does.
We have some further discussion. Supervisor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Bishop. As I understand it, the original one also included the recorder's office. So we have the assessor, the treasurer, and the recorder's office to try to combine these efforts in. We've yet to hear from the recorder.
Supervisor Watson, my primary focus is treasurer services. The recorder's office was provided as a matter of courtesy. I have not heard from them one way or the other, but the critical component was treasurer services within Havasu and Bullhead City during tax season.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Watson, or Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This board is, first of all, when the offices that used to be in Havasu and Bullhead were removed, there was no loss in personnel for the treasurer's office. Since then, the board has given them the positions from OMB, has given them the budgets from OMB. I believe if the treasurer wanted to open up the office, they have the people and the money to do it themselves. I will not be supporting this. I mean, I think it's a good idea to combine services between departments, but I'm not going to throw more money or not vote to throw more money at something when the money already exists, I believe.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion fails with a vote of 2 to 3. Going on to item number 43, discussion of possible action may include in the FY 2017 tentative budget the compression plan presented by the Sheriff's Office, which includes freezing 5 deputy positions and related costs, and reallocating the funds to provide for pay increases for eligible sworn members of the Sheriff's Office, and increasing overtime and public safety pension costs up to $50,000. Okay, Supervisor Moss. Once again, this is yours.
Simply stated, item 43 is based upon the presentation by Chief Deputy Rodney Head. It's to deal with the compression issues. It was presented at the workshop. I believe it's a very good plan, and I think it'd be wise for the board to adopt it so we can improve retention amongst our sheriff's deputies and not have to constantly be in recruitment, train, and loss mode.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Supervisor
I guess,
Johnson?
I'm not going to dispute the fact that we have a compression issue in the Sheriff's Department, but we have the same issue in every department in the county. And I think we need to, if we're going to do anything, we need to address all county employees. The only way this would possibly work would be if those positions weren't frozen, but were given up. Because next year you're going to have that $400,000 that has to be made up out of a budget. So I think those are the problems that we're faced with.
Okay. Mr. Hendricks, did you have a comment?
Madam Chairman, this was a proposal, and I don't want to get hung up on semantics. I believe the discussion was eliminate or freeze positions, but eliminate positions one way or the other. What we discussed with the departments is that if they could restructure and do less or more with less and provide benefits to their employees, that's our staff and administration would certainly support it throughout the county. So we offered that to the sheriff, and Rodney Head came up with this excellent proposal that he could do within his existing budget to try to retain qualified employees and to lessening his head count. So I just wanted to tell the board that our staff and administration is in support of his proposal.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
County Administrator is telling me that by freezing positions for 1 year, what do we do next year when the budget comes up?
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, I believe if you ask Rodney Head, Chief Deputy Head, whether he intended to say freezing or eliminating positions, you know, it's pretty much one and the same. The outcome generally is the same. If he wants to add 5 positions next year and propose that to the board, or 10 positions or 15 positions, whatever it is, he can certainly propose that to the board. So if you put a condition on eliminating those positions as a point of approving his plan, I doubt if he would have an objection or take opposition to it.
I believe at the meeting he said he was not willing to give those positions up. And I understand that next year he can come back and any department can come back and ask for more, but mine is if you have the savings should be ongoing. I realize we have 15 positions that aren't filled to begin with, so we're already saving the money.
Madam Chairman, could we ask Chief Deputy if he did take issue with that? I know it's structured a little differently, the freezing and the eliminating of the positions, but I think to accomplish his goal, he may be willing to consider that.
Morning, Mr. Head.
Good morning, Chairman and Chairwoman.
Can you clarify this for us a little bit? Because it's rather confusing.
Supervisor Johnson, I understand your thought process there, and that was mine also. I know that it can't continue in perpetuity if all we do is freeze them for 1 year. What our hope is that over the next year we can work within the county's budget system to try and find the money to start bringing that level back up. But I understand if the money can't be found at the end of this budget cycle, those positions have to remain unfilled or unaccountable for. And there would, I mean, I didn't have some pie in the eye theory that they would just automatically come back at the end of fiscal year 17.
Right. I guess from my position, I'd feel more comfortable if positions were given up. And I realize it's a semantics deal where
Sure.
where we say, okay, well,
Yeah, I don't have a problem with you calling it either. I mean, we know that if the money's not there, we certainly can't have the positions.
But it's easier when you go to the paper and go, I'm down 15 positions, and they won't fill them, as when I'm down 10, they won't fill them.
But I wouldn't consider, I mean, I wouldn't consider being down those 5 if we've agreed not to fund them, sir.
That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Head? Yeah, eliminating 5 deputy positions, I can see the board voting for that, but I don't think we have the authority to tell the sheriff how to allocate the money that's saved from those 5 positions. And the way this is written in the agenda is we're kind of telling the sheriff that we're supporting it if he does these pay increases for eligible sworn members. So I could support this if it was simplified a little bit, I believe, so.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Moss.
This item 43 is the board approving what the Sheriff's Department has recommended to the board. We're not telling them to do anything. We're saying, yes, your plan is a good plan. We're not dictating the sheriff. We're adopting the sheriff's recommendation.
That's true, but we don't know who the sheriff is going to be.
Well, we know who the sheriff is right now for this budget year, at least for half of it, and that's what we're funding for this budget year. So when it comes down to dealing with the problem that's before us, per the existing sheriff, who's the sheriff through December, and his chief deputy, we have a plan. And that plan, I believe, is supported by the administration and is supported by the sheriff. And I think it would deal with a very important problem with the sheriff's department, whether it's a freezing positions or elimination positions. I think either way it has the same financial result going forward. We're adopting the sheriff's plan. There's a major problem within the sheriff's department, and I don't see how the board's dictating to the sheriff's department at all. We're saying, yes. Now, if we're going to do nothing because there's an election, then we can say we're going to do nothing because there's an election coming up here in the next few months. But I don't think election should paralyze either the sheriff's department or the board of supervisors from taking action when there's a problem and a solution has been presented.
Okay. Supervisor Watson?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Bishop. I could be supportive of this item. I know that the sheriff's office is in dire need of making some changes. I really would like to see the 5 deputy positions being dropped rather than freezing, but I can support this. I think the sheriff's office needs every opportunity they can to work with whatever assets they can to improve the overall situation for the deputies. I firmly believe that they've been in a bad situation for a long time. This is the first of a number of items that probably should be before the sheriff and before this board. So just to say I am in favor of item number 43.
Madam Chair, is there a motion on the table?
There is not, but we're still in discussion. I think Supervisor Johnson has something to say.
Madam Chair, with the information you brought up and with what Supervisor Watson said, and myself and Supervisor Moss and even the chief deputy, I don't know if we want to approve something like this or just, have the staff prepare this for our next meeting, which is the budget meeting, so that we have time to look at it, so that this isn't written in stone today, but at least at the next meeting it will be, brought up and have an option up there by Finance Department for us.
Okay. Would that be a motion?
Madam Chair, if I could.
Supervisor Moss, go ahead.
Item 43 is only for purposes of including this proposal in the tentative budget. We're just directing staff to put it into the budget, on the tentative budget, and they would obviously be discussed as part of next meeting. This is going back to the very first item under my name, is to authorize staff to begin to make plans to include this within the budget, as they did not feel comfortable doing it without the board authorization. So Supervisor Johnson's comment is inclusive of this item 43, because it has to come back to us anyway.
Okay, and then Supervisor Angius, did you want to say something?
No, I'm just ready for the vote.
Well, we need a motion first, so I'll call for the motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item 43.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. Item number 44, discussion of possible action. Ray directs staff to reduce capital reserves for applicable internal service funds from 5 years to 2 to 3 years and include in the tentative budget a transfer of any residue balances to the general fund.
Madam Chair, this discussion would basically mirror item 40, which is, I believe, our 5-year fund balances, or that fund use balances that we accumulate are too significant, and that's reducing that by some extent and freeing those monies up for each of those departments would be more conducive to county operations.
Same dollar.
Okay, is there any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing, since there's no further discussion, I'll call for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item 44.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion fails 2-3 with my vote being opposed. Okay, number 45, discussion of possible action. Ray authorize Dr. Mosley to use the Mohave County seal in carrying out the duties of the Mohave County Medical Examiner effective July 1st, 2016.
Motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
A motion to approve with a second. There's no further discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
That would be Dr. Angius Mosley, is that correct?
Well, I couldn't pronounce the first name, so I just said Dr. Mosley, but yes, Dr.
I'm just having a little fun, thank you.
Dr. Mosley. Item number 46. What was that, Supervisor Moss?
Oh, I was just going to say, however his first name's pronounced, it's a very cool first name. Very unique.
Yes, it is. Very cool, very unusual, and we will learn to pronounce it shortly. Item number 46, discussion on possible action. Ray approved the joint letter of the Mohave County Board of Supervisors and Mohave La Paz Workforce Development Board to be submitted to the Workforce Arizona Council requesting the certification of the Mohave La Paz Workforce Development Board and authorize the chairman of the Board of Supervisors to sign the letter and submit all documents required for the certification.
Motion approved.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item number 47, discussion of possible action. Ray approved the hiring of Ashley Bischoff as a detention assistant in accordance with Mohave County Personnel Policy and Procedure 1.26, employment of relatives. This is under Sheriff Jim McCabe's name.
I have a question, Madam Chair. How did this become a late ad? What was the emergency behind this?
I don't believe there was an emergency behind it. It was just requested, and oh, the clerk says there was, so.
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, apparently the item had originally been routed to HR, but was not routed to our office. However, they want to hire this individual prior to our next meeting, so we added it to the agenda with the chairman's permission.
What, I guess my question then is, I have no problem hiring this person, but I see nothing in here from HR or from the county attorney's office talking about somebody who works for their immediate relative. Do you have anybody from HR here who wants to explain how that works?
Is Mr. Cunningham here? No?
I don't believe he is, but
Department heads don't show up for our board meetings?
there
he
must
on
be a good...
vacation?
There's somebody back there waving, I can see.
There we are.
Yeah.
And just to start out this discussion, Madam Chairman, I believe our policy says that you do not hire a relative in the direct line of authority unless you get board approval. So this person is a relative of Don Bischoff's, who's the jail commander, and he is unable to hire this individual without board approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I guess how many people do we have in the, I thought we made it a point not to have people work for relatives. I mean, we have a lot of people in the sheriff's department, obviously, and some other departments, but they're not immediate supervision.
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, that's not a staff call. If we do have a relative that a department head desires to hire, or that has in their department another relative that would be a supervisor over that department, we're not able to make that decision on whether or not they can come to work for Mohave County. That decision has to be made by the board.
If I could, Madam Chair?
Supervisor Moss, absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, so Ms. Bischoff is the daughter of the jail director, but the person who's making the recommendation to hire is Jim McCabe, who to my knowledge is, well, my understanding is of no relationship to Sheriff McCabe. So yes, the detention officer Bischoff will be reporting along the chain of command to her father along the lines, but the purpose of having these matters brought to the board is so the public knows. The whole problem with having these hires outside public view is you get the whispering mill that you have to be related to somebody or a friend of someone to get hired. When these are brought to the public eyes, the conflicts are disclosed, and it's made to the board's, it's actually the board's decision. It restores trust in the public, because this isn't Director Bischoff making the decision. This is Sheriff McCabe and the Board of Supervisors making the decision in front of the whole world. So there's no secret shenanigans going on. And if Sheriff McCabe believes that Ms. Bischoff would be a good detention officer, I wouldn't say no to that. I mean, that's his decision to make. We're just making sure that we're shining a light on it, so that there's no rumors or no belief out there that these things are handled in smoke-filled backroom rooms.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Moss. Supervisor Watson, do you have a question?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the employment of Ashley Bischoff.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Take a motion to adjourn.
Slam the hammer.
You're adjourned.